Okay, we're in downtown Lenore City today, and we're interviewing Henry Moulter, Patsy Hammondtree, and her brother Jack Hammondtree about a place that a lot of people frankly don't know a lot about. It's called Busselltown. Now Henry has a book that he wrote about Busselltown. Henry, tell us, why did you write a book about Busselltown?
Because it was disappearing very fast. And I had been there as a boy. We lived there for a summer, and there was a wonderful memory of a rural place with a couple churches, a couple stores, and all of a sudden, throughout my life, I've seen it just begin to disappear. A lot of it, some of it with Fort Loudon Dam, of course that was before me, some of it with Tellico Dam, and then especially with the widening of the road, which just sort of gutted the whole area and left nothing there but one church.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when we speak of Busselltown, would you give the listeners the location if they try to go to Busselltown today? How would they get there?
Okay. We're in Lenore City. You find 321, which crosses the main street of Lenore City, and go south. Is that south?
Yes.
Okay. And you cross the Tennessee River, and you'll see the Fort Loudon Dam on your left as you cross. And then you're onto a finger of land. And soon you'll see a sort of a 7-Eleven fast food restaurant and gas station on your left, which wasn't there years ago, of course. And then on your right, you'll find the South Holston Baptist Church. It sits up above a retainer wall, which shows that a whole hill had been removed. And on that hill stood the church, stood the school. And so the road sort of curved a bit back then. But now you see nothing but 4 lanes of concrete and turning lanes.
Okay. So by the 1950s, it's still fairly active. What were some of the things that were in Bussell Island in the 1950s?
Busselltown.
Busselltown. What do you remember being there?
Nothing much. Mostly liquor makers in the background.
Yeah, we'll get into that during the Depression.
We had 2 stores.
One of the stores was an old-timey store, and the fellow that ran it was the son of the owner of that, and he developed some sort of medicine for your bad throat, and it was Wrigley Pick. His name was Rufus Pickle, and his name is medicine Wrigley Pick.
And
you didn't know that.
No, I did not.
And you had 2 churches.
I had Methodist and Baptist, and their congregations were quite different.
In which way?
Maybe I don't want to say.
Well, I heard one family say, that we left the Methodist church, or I heard of this. They left the Methodist church and went to the Baptist church because there was more blood at the Baptist church.
They believe there's this idea of blood, very important to some Christians.
And it was basically 2 tiers of people in some ways, wasn't it? I mean, more people went to the Baptist church, I would say.
Can I tell a story about the 2
Please.
churches? The people at the Methodist church, I had dinner on the ground, reasonably read. They had one every summer, and the preacher Paul he had several circuits around there. And they told him, the women told him, there's some people that we can't invite to this dinner on ground. And he said, we're inviting everybody. So that tells you a lot about the audience.
And
When she's talking about Preacher Paul, it's Paul Worley. He's from Bristol originally. He ended up in the Methodist Church. He was a primary minister at Church Methodist Church in Knoxville. So at that time he had a circuit of 5 churches, and a lot of the starting out ministers were like Preacher Paul. They had 5 churches on their circuit. Some of them had 3, some of them had 2, but the Methodist Church has pretty much eliminated circuit ministers at this day and time.
Came from the circuit riders.
Yes,
Yeah, it did.
that's where the name came from, the circuit
The
riders.
Wesleys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He had a school, a two-room school.
Yeah, we lived right across from the church.
Tell me
That's
about
where I
it.
went.
Tell me about it.
Different people have talked to me about that. They said, you went to a two-room school, and I ended up teaching at UT. They thought that was a great
Yeah.
accomplishment. My biggest memory is that when they had a funeral across the street at the church that stopped school, we all went to the funeral. Everybody at the school went to the funeral.
Yeah.
That increased the crowd at the funeral. Rain or shine.
Everybody was related or connected in
Yeah.
some way,
That's
so they
right.
closed the school down.
But it didn't matter whether
Yeah.
But how many people lived in Busselltown during the time y'all were growing up?
I would guess about 400 or 500, but
Okay.
I'm not good at figures. He'll have to tell you that.
That's at the most.
Okay.
It was probably somewhere around 200 or 300.
How about the number of students at the school when you were there?
Patsy can answer that better than me.
Well, the first through the fifth grade was in one room, and the sixth through eighth grade was in the other room. And everybody had a seat, so nobody had to stand up. So I don't know, I'd say they had about 20 people in each room. I'm not
Okay.
sure though.
So once they, what was the name of the school, grammar school?
Just Busselltown School.
Busselltown School. Okay, so where did most of those students go to high school?
Most of those students went to Glendale and then on to Green Bay.
Okay, okay.
The Busselltown School closed, and then they went to the grade schools at Glendale, but then all of them went to high school in Green Bay.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right, yeah.
That was the early war years, and it's hard to get teachers because back that time, TVA had come here, Oak Ridge had come in here, and the teachers could make some money for a change. And so they had a hard time getting teachers.
Mhm.
Two things to add to that. One would be that the only thing officially named Busselltown was the school. There was never a road named Busselltown Road.
There was going to be.
Pardon?
There was going to be.
There was going to be, but it was a rural route of a post office in Blount County until 1936, something like that, when it became a route of Lenore City. So I've called the school board, and yes, they have records, a few records from the Busselltown School, but that'd be the only official
Really?
listing of that name.
Can I tell you a little bit about the name?
Please.
When I went to school in Middle Tennessee, and I said I went to Busselltown School for base, they thought it was a bustle that was facing on here. Women wore on their skirts. And I thought that was funny. And Busselltown would pass off as a bustle.
Yeah.
I think it belonged to Mr. Bussell. I think he got it. I think it was a reward he got for. Did you find out for sure if he got that for being in the Revolutionary War?
No, I'm not sure. He bought some land from the Lenores at first, and
Yeah,
then
he
he was
would.
given some land, awarded some land, but I never figured that out for sure. One thing that I think is very interesting but about the name is that church is South Holston Baptist Church. When they first built a church there, it was Long's Chapel, and then a few years later it became South Holston. That was just after they had changed the name of the river. Until about 1890, the Holston River came all the way down to where the Little Tennessee joined it, and that was the Tennessee River. But then they decided that the Tennessee River began where the Holston and French Broad joined.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me that the people starting the church said, we are not going to let anybody forget the name of our river, and so named the church South Holston. Yeah.